We are back in session. Parties and counsel are present. All members of the jury and our alternates are present. I apologize for the long delay. The attorneys had something they wanted to address with the court before the next witness was called, so it took a little time to discuss that. But I think we're ready to proceed now, so you can call the next witness.
People will call David Sequeida Jr.
State the testimony you shall give in the matter pending for this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. See? Look real close to this mic. State your full name, spell it for the record.
David Joe Sequeida, Sequeida.
Okay?
Are you a junior or a senior?
Neither.
Okay.
I prefer to go by Joe. I've gone by Joe since I was 16.
Okay. So I apologize for keeping you waiting all day. I hope the bench out there was comfortable.
It's about as comfortable as concrete or tile can be.
So, Mr. Sequeida, are you familiar with a company called Metro Sheetmetal?
I am.
And how are you familiar with that?
It's my father's business.
Okay. And other than it being your father's business, how are you familiar with it?
I've been in the industry with him for quite a few years, since conception.
So how old are you now, I guess?
54.
Okay. So you've been in the sheet metal business for
About 40 years.
About 40 years. Okay. And did you have periods of times where you worked with or for your father?
I have.
And what periods of times were those?
When he first started the business, being the only male child, all my weekends and summer vacations and whatnot were spent doing that type of work. And then it was primarily installation. And then when he got his first shop in Baldwin Park, I was working with him there for probably the first 10 years. Then we had a falling out, and it was about 16 years we were estranged from each other. And then we had reconciled and came back, started helping him out again.
And about when was that?
Oh, God, I want to say maybe 2007,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
And tell us exactly, what does Metro Sheetmetal do?
They manufacture and install custom stainless steel restaurant equipment.
Okay. And what kind of in general, what kind of processes go into that business?
You purchase the sheet metal on flat, typically 4x10, 4x12 sheets. We have a 12-foot shear that will do the drafting and layout, cut, notch, form, weld, polish, and install.
And were there other employees or people that worked, family members that worked in that business other than you over the years?
Both my sisters on and off.
And what about other workers?
Yeah, there's been employees come and go.
And at some point, did a person by the name of Charles Merritt have an association with Metro Sheetmetal?
He did.
Okay. Do you see Mr. Merritt in court today? Uh-oh, got to get the glasses out.
Yeah, you know that. Well, the age comes. Yes.
Okay. Can you please identify him for the record by telling us where the person you see is seated and wearing?
He's seated in the front, all the way to the left, with a blue shirt.
May the record, well, I see two blue shirts, one with a jacket, one without.
Without the jacket.
Gotcha.
Glasses.
May the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
So fun.
Can you tell the jury how you came to know Charles Merritt through Metro Sheetmetal?
Well, my father was being an avid golfer, had quite a few friends, and there was a mutual friend that introduced my father to Mr. Joe Aragon, and at that time Mr. Merritt was working out of that shop, and The way I understood it, they were looking to free themselves of Mr. Merritt.
Objection, foundation.
Sustained.
To strike.
Last answer is stricken and jury's instructed to disregard.
Okay. So your understanding was Mr. Merritt was working for Mr. Aragon?
No, he was utilizing their
Objection,
facility.
foundation.
Not up for the truth matter at this point.
Sustained, the objection sustained.
And so how did Mr. Merritt come to be associated with Metro Sheetmetal?
Through that meeting, he was making these water fountains, indoor water features, and a lot of them were being fabricated out of stainless steel. Apparently, Aragon equipment. He was a heating, ventilation, air conditioning guy. Did
Just
his
a minute, the objection sustained. You can ask the next question.
That meeting was between your dad and Mr. Aragon?
I believe it was between the mutual friend and my father and Mr. Aragon.
Oh, okay. And your understanding at the time Mr. Merritt was engaged in what kind of business?
Heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Mr. Merritt or
Mr. Aragon.
Mr. Aragon was?
Yeah.
What kind of business was Mr. Merritt involved with? Do you
He
understand?
was.
Objection, no foundation.
At that point in time, did you know what type of business he was involved in, or just heard it from other people?
No, I personally went to help him gather his tools and equipment.
Okay, overruled. You can answer.
I'm sorry, so what kind of business was he engaged in?
He was in the business of manufacturing indoor water features
You mentioned you went with Mr. Merritt to do what?
to gather his tools and whatever miscellaneous equipment he had there at Aragon.
And do what with it?
I'm sorry?
And do what with the tools and equipment?
And to bring them over to Metro.
And while helping him out, did the defendant have conversations with you about what he did?
Yes.
Okay. And did that include the fact he was building waterfalls?
Yes, in fact, he showed me a water feature that he had made for Aragon that was in their lobby.
And about what period of time was it that this occurred where Mr. Merritt came over to Metro Sheetmetal from utilizing Aragon space and you helping him move his stuff? When did that happen?
I don't understand the question.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Do you remember when, a year, a date, a month, that this move bringing Mr. Merritt into the Metro Sheetmetal world occurred?
I don't recall, no.
Was it prior to 2010?
Yes.
Do you know if it was prior to 2009?
Yes.
Okay. 2008?
I would imagine so, yes. I believe so.
Do we want to try 2007?
No.
Okay.
I'd be stretched.
Okay. So somewhere around 2008 is your best recollection?
My best recollection, yes, sir.
Okay. So you helped Mr. Merritt, the defendant, bring stuff over to Metro Sheetmetal?
Yes, he rode with me in one of our company vehicles with a trailer because I didn't know where Aragon was. And we went to the facility. He, through conversation on the ride over there, had mentioned how he had gained their trust and favor. They had given him a key to the facility. He walked us through the office and into the warehouse and showed us the area where his tools and equipment was.
And what was it you actually brought over to Metro Sheetmetal for the defendant?
It was a lot of plumbing fittings, some electrical parts, things that he used for the water features, a welder. There was a big homemade wooden tool cabinet, lots of boxes and containers of miscellaneous things.
That homemade wooden tool cabinet, did it have any type of locking mechanism on it?
It did.
And do you remember what it was?
I believe it was a padlock.
So you bring all that over to Metro Sheetmetal.
Yes, sir.
What is the defendant doing at Metro Sheetmetal?
The Metro Sheetmetal, the arrangement agreement that we had was that we were going to perform all the custom stainless steel portion of the water features. Mr. Merritt was going to do the plumbing and whatever electrical, videotape the water feature as functional, so that they could send that to the customer. He was going to crate it, and then it would get shipped.
Okay, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
Before this arrangement,
Yes.
in general, what was Mr. Merritt, was the defendant doing in the shop at Metro Sheetmetal prior to the involvement of Mr. McStay?
He wasn't doing anything. We didn't allow him to use our equipment.
Why not?
Can I speak freely?
You said something, so I asked why not.
Okay.
Let's see if there's an objection.
Your Honor, we'd object as irrelevant.
Sustained on relevance, grounds given the time frame.
Let's try to tie it a little together. At some point, do you become familiar with a person named Joseph McStay?
Yes.
And when, in relation to the defendant coming to Metro Sheetmetal, do you become familiar with Mr. McStay?
That was prior to him coming down.
Oh, okay. So I want to get my timeline a little right.
Yes.
This is Joseph McStay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do you, personally,
Yes.
become familiar with Joseph McStay?
Chase arranged a meeting. At that point, he described him, said he looked like a surfer guy, which he did. He showed up flip-flops, and he looked like he should have had a surfboard on his car, or skateboard under his arm. Real easy-going guy. He came to the shop. He came to the shop for sure twice, possibly 3 times.
Was this before or after the defendant moved his stuff from Aragon's shop to your shop?
The first meeting was before we moved his stuff in.
Okay. And what was that meeting about?
Pretty much how things were going to transpire with our relationship with Mr. McStay, with Mr. Merritt, and Metro Sheetmetal.
Who was involved in that meeting?
Myself, my father, Joseph McStay, and Mr. Merritt.
Who's Carmen Garcia, by the way?
She was our secretary at the time.
Was she involved in that meeting at that
I
time?
don't recall if she was or not.
Okay. And during that meeting, what was or is your understanding of the business arrangement that was established?
My understanding was, again, Metro was going to do all the sheet metal work. Joseph was selling the features and handling whatever invoicing, and Mr. Merritt was going to do the plumbing for the pumps that operated these water features. Any electrical, some of them had lights, some of them had other weird things. Some had etching on the glass. Some of them had rocks, tile or whatnot. And then he was going to videotape them, crate them, and then have them shipped.
Okay, when you said he's going to videotape them, crate them, ship them, you're referring to the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just to make sure I understand. Metro Sheetmetal would fabricate all the metal parts.
Yes.
The defendant would do the plumbing, the lights, accents,
Crating.
crate, and ship.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who is responsible for paying you for your work?
We were getting paid through Mr. McStay.
And how would that occur?
Check.
Okay. And how would you get those checks?
Sometimes Mr. Merritt would drop them off to us. Other times they were mailed.
Okay. And let me go back a minute to this business relationship. Was the defendant an employee of Metro Sheetmetal?
No.
Was Mr. McStay?
No.
Were you did you consider yourself a subcontractor to Mr. Merritt?
No.
What did you consider yourself?
Well, we were, I don't want to say we were partners with him, but it seemed kind of along those lines. Everybody had a part to play. We were dependent on him to do his part in order for that unit to ship. We can get paid the balance of what was owed.
And how would you or Metro Sheetmetal get orders to create a particular fountain?
Mr. McStay would email them to my father.
Okay. Your father, I take it, is a few years older than you.
Yes.
Okay. Is he technologically savvy?
No.
Okay.
He still has a Rolodex.
Would sometimes the orders maybe be faxed in?
They'd be faxed. A lot of times Carmen, she was more computer savvy than my father.
That's what I was getting at. Carmen would get the emails, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you personally, were you involved in any of the money aspects of how much you got paid, how you got paid, anything like that?
No.
Who was responsible for that?
I left that up to my father. I was the hands-on in the back fabricating.
Okay. During that time, did you regularly work with the defendant?
Yes, sir.
And during that time, did you have a lot of conversations with him?
We did. Unfortunately, he didn't get
Objection,
along too well.
non-responsive.
Sustained.
And during that time, did you have to start filling in for the defendant to get work done?
Yes.
Please describe that for us.
Well, during one time,
I'm sorry, what time period would that have been where you had to start filling in for the defendant and getting work done?
Well, it was more towards the end of the business relationship. He has mentioned to me several times.
Objection, non-responsive.
overruled, he was one.
But
Several times of frequenting the gambling facilities. He also referenced this cowboy hat that he used to wear and how there was some name he went by that he'd rather
Objection,
enjoy.
non-responsive.
Overruled.
and because of this, you personally had to step up and do a lot of the work?
In order for us, yes, for these units to get shipped and for us to get paid, I started doing a lot of the plumbing. The basic electrical I would do, otherwise my uncle was more electrical savvy.
Because of that lack of progress in getting those jobs done and you having to fill in, what was your understanding of this, I guess, three-person or three-entity partnership? I'm going to use partnership a loose term, like you
Yes.
did, and how it was functioning.
Can you repeat that again?
Were you able to maintain this three-person partnership with that happening?
Yeah, it became two-person.
Okay. And did you believe that three-person partnership was going to be able to continue with that happening?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled, answer.
No.
In your interactions with the defendant, your father, Mr. McStay, was it your anticipation that that three-person partnership would continue?
We had a conversation with Mr. McStay that we couldn't continue this way.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
And that in order for us to continue doing what we were doing, we really had no need to continue with Mr. Merritt, but being that he was partnered with Mr. McStay, that was his call as to what percentage he was getting and what his involvement was, because we were basically shouldering the whole burden of fabricating this.
So out of respect to Mr. McStay, you expressed those concerns about productivity to him,
Yes,
to
sir.
let him deal with that issue.
Yes, sir.
Objection, leading.
Overruled, answer.
Did the defendant have free reign of the Metro Sheetmetal workshop?
Objection, vague.
Overruled.
No.
In what ways did he not?
There was more than one conversation I recall with my father and Mr. Merritt. He kind of wanted to have an open door policy like he did at Aragon, and we weren't going to allow that. He
He being the defendant?
yes, sir. He didn't demonstrate sufficient knowledge
Objection,
of
non-responsive.
Sustained.
How was the defendant allowed to access the Metro Sheetmetal shop?
He was only allowed to be there when myself and my father was there. I had even gone through the exercise of making sure the door in the back, the roll-down door was closed and locked, forcing him to come through the front office.
You said the money would come in either by mail or be delivered by the defendant. Did Mr. McStay ever bring any checks personally to your knowledge?
No.
Okay. Are you personally aware, not from what you may have heard from someone else, but are you personally aware of any occasions where you were expecting payment from Mr. McStay and it did not arrive?
Yes.
How many times?
At least twice that I can recall.
Do you have personal knowledge or personally involved in one of those instances where the defendant was questioned about where that payment was?
Yes.
Can you please describe that for us?
We were expecting payment. We had spoken with Mr. McStay, which he mentioned that he had given a check to Mr. Merritt.
Objection
And-
foundation as to we being him present or the business.
Overruled. Again, this is a situation where it's not being offered to prove that Mr. McStay actually gave the check, but it's offered to show that's what they were advised of, and they then did something or had a conversation, and whatever the conversation is may or may not be relevant. But so you know that this is what they were told. That's why they had the conversation.
So you may continue, please, if you remember where you were.
We were in my father's office.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, where you were in your answer.
Yeah, we were on the phone. My father had him on hands-free
With Mr. McStay.
with Mr. McStay.
Okay.
And he said that the check was given to Mr. Merritt, and at which point we told him, well, we never got it.
What did you do after you learned that the check was supposed to be delivered by the defendant?
Again, my father was the one that handled the money. We had, aside from the water features, we also had other projects and things going on that I was overseeing and involved with. Were you personally aware of a confrontation with the defendant asking about where that payment was? They had quite a few confrontations. Yeah.
Specifically as this one, where Mr. McStay indicated the check was being delivered by Mr. Merritt.
Yes.
And tell us how that happened.
Again, my dad doesn't pull no punches, and he's pretty blunt. And they got into a pretty heated argument about it.
You were present then?
I'm sorry?
You were present for that?
Yes, it came out into the shop.
And where did the defendant say that check was?
I don't recall.
Do you recall telling investigators where that check went?
I don't.
If you were to look at a summary of your statement to the police, would that potentially refresh your recollection?
Most definitely.
Okay. 7398. 7398. The first paragraph here, if you can read that to yourself in your brain, and let us know when you're done.
Okay. I do recall that.
You do?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what you recall?
He mentioned that he had used those funds to purchase materials that he needed for one of the fountains.
Okay. And that he being the defendant.
Yes, sir.
And was there a problem with that?
Yes,
Why?
because that check was allocated to us for the work that we put in for the water features.
At least that was your understanding.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
sir.
just to object on the foundation, was Sean mistaken, was that something he heard or was that something he was told?
Overruled.
At some point, did you go with the defendant to a storage unit?
I did.
And where was that storage unit?
It was up the street from the Aragon shop. That was the day that I was moving them in.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. This conversation about confronting them about the check,
Yes, sir.
you have an approximate time frame when that occurred?
far as a date,
Yeah, I mean, 2009, 2010.
yeah, no, I couldn't tell you.
How long after that was it? You became aware at some point that Mr. McStay and his family were missing,
How long after that incident?
either before or after?
That was before they.
About, do you have any idea how long before?
You know what, it had to have been maybe a month or so.
Okay.
I guess just to jump on the judge's line of questioning, to
Yes.
clarify something, what was the time frame, or how long do you recall Metro Sheetmetal being engaged in this business with Joseph McStay and the defendant?
You know what, it wasn't very long. It wasn't very long because, like I mentioned, my father and Mr. Merritt, my father just wasn't digging it. And he basically said, you know, you,
Foundation.
Sustain, yeah, the question's been answered.
Let me try and put it in this way. You did at some point learn that Mr. McStay could not be reached or
Yes, sir.
contacted.
Yes.
And do you recall, do you have an independent recollection of a month, a date, a year that was?
It was, I want to say about a month or so before they were known to be missing.
Okay. Would that be about February of 2010? Does that ring a bell?
I think, I think it was like in 09.
Okay. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It's been a long
Okay.
time.
Well, at some point when you learn or that there's difficulty reaching Mr. McStay, did you ask the defendant about it?
We did, because he was constantly on the phone with Joseph.
Okay. How did the defendant react?
Objection
He
speculation.
wasn't concerned.
Objection speculation.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, you said he wasn't concerned?
He didn't seem alarmed or like it was anything out of the normal.
And I'm sorry, we kind of got off track a little bit. I asked you about a storage unit.
Yes, sir.
That was not at Mr. Aragon's shop, correct?
No.
That was a standalone.
It was a storage facility. Once we had loaded up everything that he had had asked about swinging by the storage facility, which I was not really looking forward to. We had wasted quite a bit of time gathering his things at Aragon's. And we went to this storage facility, and at which point he opened the roll-up door, and he had some unfinished projects in there, some, I guess, maybe prototype type of water units with miscellaneous tools and things. I think I recall a couple of like Roman pillar column type things in there. And at that time I said, no, you know, we don't have the room for this right now. I mean, we had a trailer full of stuff that belonged to him.
That storage place is kind of a normal retail mini storage type place.
Yes, kind of like a public storage or.
And that storage space, that was also locked when you went to that with him,
Yes, sir.
with a padlock,
Yes, sir.
and it contained fountain supplies and other stuff.
Other things in there, yes.
How long after you know that the McStays went missing did your business relationship with the defendant last?
It spiraled really quick because there was a huge project that went to Dubai. And this was a really big water feature. It shipped in three big crates. And we were concerned about getting our final payment because once it shipped, there was no way for us to get paid. And that's when we couldn't get in touch with Mr. McStay.
What about the defendant? Where was he?
He was back and forth. At that point, Joseph's mom, Susan, had contacted us, and they were doing what they could on their end to try and locate Mr. McStay.
Was there ever a formal separation between the defendant and Metro Sheetmetal?
No, 'cause shortly after that, me and my father parted ways again.
Okay. Do you recall ever, after the McStays went missing, the defendant paying you or your dad or Metro Sheetmetal money for completed projects?
No, sir.
Objection, foundation, as he said he wasn't at the business anymore.
I asked if he was aware.
Overruled answering.
You said no.
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Cross.
Thank you. Did you actually, oh, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Did you actually see any of the checks that actually came to Metro Sheetmetal from Mr. McStay?
Yes.
So how would it work? Mr. McStay would mail it, or he would send it through Chase, or
Yes.
which one?
Both.
Okay, both. Okay. And how many times do you think that you would have maybe seen the check, or maybe did Chase ever give them to you?
He had given them to me, and I just passed them on to either my father or Carmen.
Okay, so approximately how many times would he have given you a check to pass on?
At least half a dozen times, maybe.
So, and how long is it, based on your memory, that this association between you and your father, Mr. McStay, and Mr. Merritt, basically three parties, right?
Yes, sir.
How long did that go on for?
I said it wasn't very long. I would say probably less than a year.
I'm sorry?
I said, to the best of my knowledge, probably less than a year. Like I said, shortly after that, me and my father parted ways again.
Okay, and you had, I think you testified that you had parted ways prior,
We had
and so you were, and that part lasted for 16 years?
16 years, yes.
You came back and joined him again in, was it 2007, you said?
Right or thereabouts.
Around there, okay. And then, did you immediately start working for Metro Sheetmetal at that time?
No, it was more getting his vendors situated and getting in order, finding out he had somebody that was working for him that just wasn't doing things properly.
How long after you reconciled with your father in 2007 did you go back to work at Metro Sheetmetal?
Maybe a year and a half.
So maybe 2008, perhaps even 2009, you think?
No, by 2009 I was already with him.
You were already with them in
Yes, sir.
2009? Okay. And had you been in the 16 years that you were estranged from your father, did you do fabrication during that time, or did you do something else?
No, I worked for a company that was a heating, ventilation, air conditioning company that branched out into custom stainless steel work.
So were you doing the stainless steel work?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be safe to say that it was less than a year that you were back with your dad that this association with you, Joseph McStay, and Charles Merritt formed? Meaning you were back less than a year at the time that this...
Thereabouts. In this industry, you like a lot. You got to go out, measure a job, put a quote together, get the deposit, go through a plan check, pull permits, go through inspections and whatnot. And I was trying to get my father to lean and get Metro to lean more towards just doing the fabrication. And that was the allure of doing these water features. We didn't have to go hunting the work down or bid it. The work was brought straight to us. We quoted it and built it, shipped it, and got paid.
Okay. And were you able to observe the times that you saw Joseph and Mr. Merritt together? Were you able to observe them interacting with each other as well?
Again, Joseph, he was real laid back. He was just like this surfer guy, and he kind of just leaned back in the chair and didn't seem really too concerned about, it's kind of like your word was your bond kind of deal. He was comfortable dealing with us, but it wasn't like they sat next to each other or anything like that.
Okay. So when this whole first meeting occurred, I think you may have indicated that it was Mr. Merritt who kind of arranged for Joseph to come and meet with you guys, correct?
Well, when my father and we both realized that Mr. Merritt was not the one that was going to be paying the invoice, we obviously wanted to talk to the guy that was doing it.
Right. So, but in other words, all the work that came from Mr. McStay, your company,
Yes.
your father's company,
Yes.
you guys got all of that work because of your association with Mr. Merritt, correct? You wouldn't have got, you didn't meet Mr. McStay on your own, did you?
No.
It was Mr. Merritt who brought that work to Metro Sheetmetal.
Actually, it was the common friend that my father, local buddy that he had, that orchestrated that.
Well, the common buddy
Mhm.
brought Mr. Merritt, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But the common buddy didn't bring Mr. McStay, did he?
No.
Okay. So it was Mr. Merritt who brought Mr. McStay to the table, correct?
He was his partner, yes.
Okay. So there would be no McStay business for Metro Sheetmetal except for Mr. Merritt, correct?
There would have been no Mr. Merritt with Metro without Mr. McStay.
Well, you would have never met him.
Well, he wasn't the one paying the invoices. We wouldn't have done business with him.
I understand, but you would have never met Mr. McStay without Mr. Merritt. Was that
He
fair to say?
arranged the meeting, yes.
Okay. So now, you mentioned Carmen. Was Carmen also the ones that would send out statements from your company?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 740. If you could take a look at this and tell me if you recognize that document.
Those are the Paul Mitchell,
Well, no, just before you get into the content, if you recognize the document itself.
it looks like it was generated from Metro Sheetmetal, yes.
And what is it?
It's a statement.
Okay. And do you know what the statements that your company sends out, what do those statements reflect?
Again, I wasn't on that end of the business. That was Carmen's responsibility.
I understand. But the statements that Metro Sheetmetal would send out would be to customers that they had business with, is that right?
They would, to my knowledge, they would send whether it was a copy of a paid invoice. Typically, she would have, I believe, stamped it paid, check number, date.
And then every month or so, Metro Sheetmetal will send a statement to those customers?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Like I said, I was more the hands-on fabricating.
Okay. But you do recognize that as one of Metro Sheetmetal's statements, correct?
That's what it says.
Okay. And then you mentioned a Paul Mitchell job, is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, by the way, what's the date of that statement?
March 1st, 2010.
Okay. And does it have a final balance that's due to Metro Sheetmetal at that time?
Objection, hearsay that lacks foundation.
Overruled.
There's a circle around it.
Oh yeah, amount due, $3,450.
Okay. So would that, based on your knowledge, I know you didn't handle the money part, but based on your knowledge of Metro Sheetmetal business, would that be, well, let me strike that. Let me ask you this. How many, you said you were familiar, you touched about a half a dozen or so checks that Mr. Merritt brought from Mr. McStay and gave to you, correct?
Yeah, typically they were in an envelope.
But there was more than just those half a dozen, you think, or was that it?
I would imagine there was more.
Okay. You guys did some big projects, as you mentioned, correct?
Well, Paul Mitchell was one of them, and the Dubai project was by far the biggest one.
Okay. Do you mean Saudi Arabia, or do you mean Dubai?
Dubai, Saudi Arabia, yeah.
Okay. Well, they're different places, so I'm just wondering, was there a
Well, I only knew
Dubai?
it as Dubai, that they were going to Dubai.
Okay, so your understanding is there was a Dubai project as well?
Yes.
Okay. But you're familiar, and now this document indicates that for Paul Mitchell, you billed $14,700. That's a lot of money, right? For the Paul Mitchell job?
Objection, lacks foundation.
Sustained.
And it also reflects that there was 2 payments that were made to Metro Sheetmetal, and they even give check numbers.
Again, object, lacks foundation, personal knowledge.
Sustained.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 515A17. You recognize that?
No.
Do you know what that is?
Copy of the check.
Just overall, he can answer if he knows what it is.
I'm assuming it's a copy of a check to Union Bank of California, Earth Inspired Products.
Okay. And does it have an amount there?
It does.
And what is that?
$6,350.08.
And who is that made out to?
Metro Sheetmetal.
Okay. Is this one of the checks that Mr. Merritt gave to you?
Again, what he gave them to me were an envelope.
You didn't look at them then?
No.
Okay. I'm going to see if I can put this on the overhead. Does this check have a date on it that you were able to see?
February 1st, 2010.
Just for the record, Your Honor, we are showing exhibit 515A17.
Okay. Actually, that appears to be not the check itself, but the carbon copy of the check, correct?
Correct. Okay, and that would be, now you said you didn't handle this check, correct? On February 5th?
Again, if it was in an envelope, I could have. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. And is there a notation at the bottom left?
Objection, at this point, hearsay, lacks foundation.
Sustained.
Right. I'm going to show you again 740.
Objection to publication, no foundation,
Your Honor, these were established by people's publication by the last witness.
not 740.
740, he established the foundation for it, the witness.
Counsel approach. I hate to do this. Counsel approach for one moment. No. Okay. Okay, well, after that, very stimulating discussion. It's about 4:20, so we'll go ahead and take our recess at this time. We're not in session tomorrow, being Friday. Monday is a holiday, so we won't be in session on Monday. So we will be back on Tuesday. So everyone enjoy the long weekend. Don't get sick or sicker. And again, keep in mind the admonitions not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case, or allow anyone to discuss the case with you or in your presence. Again, that means not discussing anything about the case, witnesses, testimony, exhibits, parties, or attorneys, and of course not to read anything about the case or do any research on the case. We'll see everyone back Tuesday morning at 9:30. And Mr. Sequeida, I'm afraid we'll need you back on Tuesday.
I'll be here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.